Hello, this is Victor and I want to do a tutorial. And next tutorial is going to be focused on the miniature that you can see here in the screen. This is taken from the Reaper Miniatures website. So shortly you will see video where I show how to paint this miniature. What I did is I based this miniature on a 20 by 20 base to match the bases for Warhammer Fantasy. And now I want to do a tutorial on how I will paint this miniature and what is the color scheme that I will follow. I will use this miniature for my Dogs of War army. Most likely I will finish using her as a ranger, or maybe just one of the duelists, one more of the duelists on my army. But I will try to match as much as possible the color scheme for my army. I still hesitating how to what color to use for the cape, if black with gray highlights or maybe a very dark green to make more the look that he is a ranger that is joining my Dogs of War army. So this is the first part of the tutorial, this first part as you have seen in the title, I will focus on the base, so how to do realistic tank, mass and all this type of things here. So the first thing I do when I want to do this type of work is I look for pictures in internet as inspiration. So now I will share you some pictures and then to see what is my idea behind. So as you can see here, the first thing that I want to show is that first the bark isn't that a lot of times we see them painted in browns. It's not really browns. Normally are more grayish, greenish colors, as you can see here. And then the core of the tree is normally, or the trunk is normally a more lighter wood, lighter color. Here we have one example. This is recently cut. Here we have another example. This is very interesting for me. This is the inspiration on how I will do the moss and the vegetation around the trunk. I will try to follow the same type of color that you can see here, going to a very light green. That is what you can see in that picture. As you can see also, you look at the barks are more greenish and blacks, and here are more light browns, but you you see here another example of the bark very greenish, and then the core in very light colors. Another example here is I wanted to look at the lichens that normally there. Here where I live in Belgium, I was looking the trunks today. All of them are almost covered by lichens and moss, so are more green than brown most of the cases. Another example, this is a light gray color, and this was for me to see how the core is looking like in a car. So I like to make some pictures. This is more similar of what I want to do, sorry. So this will is for the broken part. I will go for something that is older and not that fresh as in the first picture. So what I want to share here is just also as an advice. This is a very good one as well. So as an advice is look first some references before painting. It's very inspirational and can give you very good guidances on how you are going to paint your miniature. You see this more brown bark with very greeny stones. Another thing that you can see from all these pictures is that the trunk have not a uniform color, have a lot of gradients of colors, from greens to browns, ochres, grays. So it's important to try to capture a little bit of that when you're painting. Another example here, very greenish, and with some green tones here. So this is just to show you some examples of trunks that I use as inspiration. And now I will pass to explain how I paint the miniature. So I hope you enjoy, and let's start with the tutorial. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint this trunk here on this miniature. This is a Reaper miniature. Is like a elf, explorer elf, standing on top of a broken trunk. So now I'm going to paint the trunk, and I will use the pictures that you have seen before as a guidance. So as you can see here, I use Charadon Granite. It's a very dark greenish and brownish color. I think it's matching very well with the bark color that I want to match. I want to do this dark gray and then you will see that there is a lot of greenish things. I will do all this green, and then I will use the technical paint to do all the base around. So in this first part I will explain you how I paint the base, and I will focus this part of the tutorial on how to do the branch in a way that is not the typical brown, that is not looking like a trunk. It's more looking like a piece of something brown there. And as you have seen in the pictures before, the trunks and the bark of the trunks is not brown. It's this type of greenish and brown color, and you can be a little bit more brown or can be a little bit more gray or green, depending on the type of depending on the tree and the forest and the humidity around. So this looks quite humid here, so I will apply also some green colors, but I will use some tonalities of greens that are quite greenish. As you can see, the first thing I do is I will start with the trunk. I will paint the trunk with this dark grayish and brown color. I don't need a lot of the tail brush here, just paint this, and I will paint all the trunk, and then as you have seen in the broken, the inside of the wood normally is more clear. I don't know if this, here I will suppose that this is recently broken, so, and to give some contrast and give some more life into this miniature, because I remember that normally this miniature is painted with the cloak green, but in my case I will do the cloak on black greenish as well, because I want to be to match the rest of my duelist of my army. So, and I want to keep the same. I want to constrain my palette to the black, red, goldens, and yellows, and that's also because this is the palette that I normally use for my army. So all other colors I just use as auxiliary colors, and I want to put very little. So no way that the cape have to be black, greenish, or red. No way to do this lady red. Will look like the, how it's called, the little riding red hat, red hood. I don't know how it's called this in English. I don't want her to look like that. So this first part of the tutorial I will focus on how to do the trunk in a realistic way. Try to fuse it with the greenish and not to be the typical brown trunk that is not realistic at all. So as you can see here, I'm painting first all the roots of the trunk, and next I will do the ground, and to be sure that I don't leave it. And here you see that there's some greenish things like moss or lichens, so I will paint them as well in a different color. So this is how it's looking like. And now I will wait until it's dry before doing the next step. So keep working on this base. The next thing I will do, I will paint the ground around the tree. So what I will do is I will do first brown like mud. Then I will go for a vibrant green next to the trunk to simulate the moss. So first I will use this dryad bark. This also can be a nice color to do bark. It's quite but this time I will use it to do the mud or the muddy area next to here. I will not paint this part because it's like moss. Hope the camera is well oriented. Sorry if I was off camera. Okay, so as you see, I want to go with very dark colors here. And I will paint the rest of the base with the technical paint that is cracking. We also show here how to use it. Once you apply this technical paint, you have to wait for some time because it needs time to dry. Because you have to the technical paint that is simulating cracked mud or matte. It's needs to apply a thick layer. This is the opposite of any other painting. So to make it work, you see, I paint all this part, and then I should not forget this part here that is more difficult to answer. And what is important, especially when you are priming on white, is it's better to go a little bit over the previous color or to the next, or a little bit over out of the area where you're painting, to ensure that you don't leave any white dot. So this is the for me the main drawback when you prime on white, is you have to be very careful not to leave any white dot. And then before applying the other paint, first I will give a base of this color all over the base, because the other color will crack and you will see what is the color below. So I will just apply this color here. Now we need to wait until all this is dry. So this is how it looks like. Okay, and now we have to wait until this brown is completely dry. So this is how it looks like after applying the color, the brown, the dry bark here. And now what I will start working a little bit on the highlights and working this part here, because then once I have the highlights here, I will start doing the green tones, and we'll do then the rest. But first I want to highlight the bark of the trunk, and to do that I will start using Camry Brown. Most likely I will start first with the stone vermin fur. So I will play with these two colors. First I will start with the stone vermin fur. This is how you, sometimes you need to balance, make a trial and see how it looks like. I think this will look like correctly well. It's going to be the first smooth, it's going to be a smooth highlight. So I will, following the texture, I will not do dry brush, I will just follow the texture that the sculpt did on the bark, and try to follow in the straight lines, as you can see, going up like that. So the first one, you will see that it's very subtle. This vermin fur will change very little compared to the previous layer, but it's better to start soft, make the first highlights very subtle, and start start making the highlights more visible. So this is how I like to work, and this is how I calibrate. I like to calibrate the color or balance the color at the same time I'm painting it. You see that I go for quite greenish color for the bark, And I'm not using brown, so the brown I will use is Camry brown, that is quite grayish as well, to do some highlights. There are areas that are going to be more difficult to reach, but I try to avoid to do the dry brush here and just follow the different textures that the sculptor did on the miniature. Okay. Here at the bottom. This bottom I will put a lot of green at the end. I think I will do. But what I like to do is to follow the natural process. I like when I do damage or when I do dirtiness, I like first to paint clean, and once I finish, then start doing the dirtiness on top of the clean paint. In that way, I think you follow the natural process, how the miniature has been, or the thing, the object that you're painting has been dirtied, and will look more natural. For example, here, first I prefer to paint the rods. Then if they have been there with mud, I will paint the mud then later on top of that. Okay, this will finalize the first highlight. Just using, it's very subtle. The next one I will use Camry brown. I think Camry brown is one of the browns that I like more. It's a type of tonality that looks very natural. It works very well with when you try to do something, simulate the nature. So you see, this one is much more visible. We'll give this brownish accent that we want to give. Maybe you don't need to highlight everything, just to create some accent points. And we'll give, if you put too much, this is another thing that you can do. If you put too much with the finger, sometimes you can clean. So try to put little amount, not too much. As you see, I'm just following the texture. I'm not doing dry brush. I try to follow the intent of the sculptor. Here I will start from up to down. See, and you don't need to do all the wrinkles or all the texture of this. Just put accent on some of them. You see. This is what you want to do. Just give organic look. Here, for example, I will not apply anything. Okay. If you feel that the accents that you are adding are too strong, you always can do at the end a wash of Agax Air Shade. It will balance the color, will make the highlights less visible. It all depends on your taste. If you're looking for very subtle highlights, normally when I do highlights, I like them to make them visible and quite easy to see. This is why I will leave it like that. But making a wash with Agax Air Shape will work as a glaze, will make the highlights less visible. an Agvax air shade will work very well here. So this is what I will do. And now for the inside we are going to use an aqua, and the color we can use can be, for example, Ungor flesh. So you see, it looks like the core of the wood, and then I will paint this straightforward. Thin layer. Try to not to block any of, for example, here that looks. I will do this thing here like that. This way I was not painting. Sorry that I ran out of battery. So what I was explaining is, here this part that looks like broken, I will apply this line like that, and then it looks like the bark is tear out. Okay, I hope it's visible. And I have to say, when I'm doing tutorials, it's not easy for me sometimes to see what is seen in the camera. Although I can turn the small screen of the camera with the light I have in front, I cannot see very well the screen of what I'm filming sometimes. This I want to apologize if sometimes it's not very visible what I'm doing. So what you see here, I'm doing this part with Ungor flesh. It's I think it will simulate very well the wood of the core of the trunk. Okay. Okay. So now I will let it dry, because I want to do a wash with Agvax A shade on this part here. So I will let it dry completely, and then I will start working with the greens and with the rest of the base. Okay? So this how looks like now that the clear color is that here, and now what I will do is I will make it darker by applying Agvax Air Shade Wash. I apply it generously because I want to, and then I will also apply a little bit on the bark itself. Will help to soften the highlights that I did before. I'm going to give maybe more realistic finishing and less, because it was a little bit too aggressive, the highlights, so it will smoothen it as well. And of course, after applying a wash, we will need to wait. So this is how it's looking like now. The wash is still fresh, and I will wait until the wash is completely dry. So now you see all the trunk is, so the wash is completely dry, so the trunk is finished, and now the next step is to start adding the green. So I will start applying Dark Angels green. I want to start from very dark, and I will go to very vibrant green. As you can see, the moss can be very light color, very vibrant green. So I will start painting this part here. It is like looking like moss. But I will paint also more. I will paint down here. I'll paint most of the parts around the trunk. Don't worry if you hit the trunk with when doing this green, because this plant can climb easily over the trunk, so it will not look bad. So for example here we'll completely do this part. I hope I'm on camera. Sometimes I'm not sure. Sorry if I'm covering with my hand what I'm doing. I try to be. So you see I'm hitting this part, and then I will also apply here a little bit. Okay. We'll also do the hole here. Just hitting this part. So as I said, I wanted to do all this part greenish. Okay. Now we have to wait until this dry completely. We'll play a little bit more. Something like that. Next step. Well, we have to wait until this is dry, and I will apply the next layer. So the green now is dry, but what I want to do, because I have to wait some time to let it dry, I will apply Argelian earth. This is the technical paint from Games Workshop that is cracking when it's dry. To make a nice cracking effect, you have to put a thick layer. So it's the opposite of any other painting technique. So you take quite a lot, and I'm going to apply a generous layer of this paint here, and it will crack later on. It will look like dry mud. So as you can see, I am not even taking the excess from the brush, and I'm using it all to apply it all over the base. Okay, and this will need quite some time to dry. They will need some time to dry before cracking. So I will let it down because I don't want to touch it while it's drying, and I will be back once the paint is completely dry. So once the paint is dry, you see that it's cracking. The cracks are quite small in that case because the surface is small. Maybe I didn't add the right thickness. But what I will do to make the cracks more visible, I will use Agvax Airshade and make a soft wash. So in that way the cracks are going to be much more visible, and we are going to make the whole texture more visible. So I will do a wash with Agvax Airshade. Okay, and then we'll let it dry as usual. So that's it, and now we wait until this is completely dry. Now that the wash is completely dry, I will start working on the greens to make a little bit the vegetation, and I want to go to very vibrant green. So I will use Warstone Glow and Mood Green from Citadel. So I will do some highlights on the green that I applied before, leaving part of the dark green that I use as a base coat visible. So as you can see, I go for the things that are more. I don't do the dry brush because I think the dry brush is too rough, or too, how to say. So I'm not fan of the finishing of the dry brush when doing these type of things. So I prefer to do like spotting with the green the areas that I think have to be much lighter. If you remember the pictures, there was one of the trees that was completely covered by moss. It was a very vibrant or light green, lightful green, so I will go for the same type of green. Here as you see, I'm trying to go with the brush just on top of the more external parts. In that way I leave randomly some of the dark parts, you see. So the idea is to give, in that case we give dimness and volume to the green part. Okay, we'll do the same here. Just try to the most external parts and a little bit of random of this green glow. Okay, you see, and then also here on the hole I will put a little bit. This part here is going to be the most difficult to spot, but just to put a little bit. You don't need to be precise, and you don't need to do exactly all the different so you don't have to follow all the different things that you see. So something like that will be good enough. And now we go for the mud green. It's much lighter, much vibrant, and I will, you see, will give. You can leave some parts darker and other parts much lighter. So for example here I can leave this part and I will do this part here. So just to make like a regular pattern. You see. So something like that. I will put more here at the bottom. All of this light green. I want to make the look like that the moss that is climbing on the trunk is most of this lightful moss. See, you try to give some parts, and this way it's looking much more lightful. Cover most of the parts, but not all. Okay, this can be a good way to do it. Okay, the last thing I will do now, I will try to simulate a little bit more the lichens on the bark of the trunk. So I will use lighter colors in that case. You can use, for example, quick khaki. You can use ugly camel green, this type of colors. Even this will give very nice touch. Is undershift hash. Is a dry paint. Have a lot of texture, and I think I will use this one because it will give also like a little bit the texture that the lichens will have. You don't need a precise, so I take this type of brush and you try to make like dots. Okay, so for example here at the bottom, okay, I will apply a little bit here underneath. So to give this type of texture, and you can. So I will apply a little bit more on different areas. You try not to put too much. You see, I try to put just like spots, dots. This will be enough, okay? So some areas that are clean, some areas that have much more, and it's just to simulate the different lichens and things that can spot on top of the trunk. So I think this will give a very nice touch. I will give the base finalized at this point. I just wanted to take the camera from a different angle to be sure that I show you this first part of the tutorial, so was to do quite as much realistic as I can this trunk with broken trunk where she is standing on top. A little bit of mud around this part and vegetation, and also this type of lichens, and try to make the trunk as much realistic as I can. So I will give this finish it at this point, and this first part of the tutorial, finishing the tutorial on how I do the base and how I do the trunk. And now I will start the second part of the tutorial, where I will start explaining how I paint the actual miniature. So thanks a lot for watching this first part, and see you in the following.